Some people feel that the news media reacted to Trump's tariff strategy like an hysterical woman who imagines she saw a mouse in her bedroom and leaps up onto a chair shrieking insanely until her husband rushes out of the bathroom where he's been locked away with his iPad for the last 2 hours and tells her to calm the hell down, which only makes her more upset, so she starts babbling incoherently that it's not about the mouse, it's about the fact that she feels neglected, whereupon her husband breaks down and admits he's been struggling with a addiction, which makes her start sobbing uncontrollably because now she feels unattractive on top of everything else. And the husband says, well, excuse me, but I have to go back to struggling with my addiction, and locks himself in the bathroom again so that the woman totally flies off the handle, sets the house on fire, and runs into the street screaming about Trump's tariff strategy. Until a doctor arrives and gives her a bunch of sedatives, proving that men never take women seriously because they sound just like the news media. Other people feel the news media reacted to Trump's strategy more like a man who was locked in the bathroom with his pants around his ankles and suddenly realizes his house is on fire. Now, personally, I worry that this open distrust of American journalism may cause many people to have negative feelings about the most corrupt and destructive industry in the country. So, let's take a look at some of these tariff news reports, and you can judge for yourself, or just let me judge for you, which will probably work out better for everyone. In one example, the New York Times, a former newspaper, greeted the tariffs with a headline in 147-point type reading, quote, "Re, look out, Trump is creeping up behind you. He may already be inside the house. Run for your life. Re, unquote. Conversely, the Wall Street Journal, which was a newspaper until much more recently, greeted the turmoil in the stock market with a thoughtful op-ed by Milburn Pennybags, the CEO of the famous investment firm Sachs of Goldman. Mr. Pennybags wrote, quote, "I don't want to hear about some imaginary division between Wall Street and Main Street. We're all together in this as Americans, each one doing his part, whether he's helping to decrease the surplus population by overdosing on opiates in the gutter of a deserted street in what was once a thriving factory town, or he's sailing his yacht from one sun-drenched tax haven to another while panicking over the fact that he lost 0.5% of the $400 billion he earned doing what looks for all the world like absolutely nothing. The fact is, Trump is destroying an economy that, to my mind, has been good for absolutely everyone, because to my mind, I am absolutely everyone," unquote. Administration officials have maintained that Trump is trying to revolutionize a financial system that has left the U.S. at the mercy of the oppressive communist regime in China. But NBC News' Chinese correspondent, Ai-Hei Chu, disagreed. In a report from a submarine off the coast of Greenland, Chu said, quote, "The financial system has been working wonderfully for decades, facilitating friendly relations between the United States and our much wiser overlords in Beijing. Without them, our iPhones would cost much more money, and we would not be able to distract ourselves with soul-deadening videos while hostile foreigners take over our food and medical supplies. I even think we are well prepared for a potential war with China as long as China will sell us enough bullets," unquote. CNN's tariff reaction went viral after it was posted on X with the caption, "Conservative Scott Jennings slaughters, dismembers, and buries the body parts of clueless liberal commentator." The accompanying video showed CNN commentator Libby Clueless saying, quote, "I think tariffs are just like Hitler because they're German and have a small mustache," unquote. Whereupon Scott Jennings hurled himself across the desk, slaughtered her, dismembered her, and was in the process of burying her body parts when he was apprehended and appointed Assistant Treasury Secretary. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through the complete collapse of the mainstream news media, because that happens to be really funny. Not one more time, I'm going to do this a lot. I want you to go out, please, and pre-order The Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. Go on Amazon because that helps move it up the list. Even if you don't like Amazon, please pre-order The Kingdom of Cain. I just got back from New York. I had an interview, a long-form interview with Eric Metaxas, who was just great to talk to about these things. And as I was talking about it, I thought, people are going to love this book. If you like the show, you are going to love this book. And it is about Christianity and art and the evil and the way that art explains evil and should be embraced by Christians in all its manifestations. And it's just, I think, a really entertaining book that you will really enjoy. Also, while you're pre-ordering, you can do this with one hand, and in the other hand, you can send in a comment, and wherever you put in your comment, if that comment is just as low as it's possible to be in every way, morally and politically, and just completely unacceptable, we will read it on the air, because that's who we are. This is a comment from Dominic Orr. Is that what it says? Dominic Orr says, I don't know if I'm just crazy, but I swear whenever Klavan uploads his podcast, something absolutely insane happens the following day or Sunday. Am I just nuts? No, this is one of the reasons I invented the term the Klavanless week. It was actually originally the Klavanless weekend when I was doing the show 4 days a week, was because every time the show went off the air, there was a catastrophe over the weekend. And so it was when I stopped talking, I think the demons recognize that the air is free of, holiness, and they just start invading. And that's why the Klavanless week is as bad as it is. And I just wanted to note that we did not use a comment about the Trump happiness montage, because we're done with that entirely. We will not be playing that anymore. Look, with all the things that are going on, I think that joke has gotten a little old. So we're putting that aside. If you notice that we've been doing a lot of comments about that, but we're not doing that any longer. So we'll just get right to today's episode. The news media BeClowns itself. Everybody, including me, I know it's hard to believe, but even I need my fruits and veggies, and you really can't eat enough of them without getting juice in your beard. So try Balance of Nature fruits and veggies. It's the most convenient way to get whole fruits and vegetables daily, especially if you're focused on creating a healthier, happier lifestyle. Nature is good at giving us the nutrients we need through our fruits and vegetables. So Balance of Nature takes the fruits and vegetables, freeze dries them, turns them into a powder, and then puts them in a capsule. No fruits and vegetables are hurt during this process. And then you take your capsule every day, and then your body knows what to do with them. Balance of Nature is just one ingredient of a balanced lifestyle and has no intention of replacing a healthy diet, exercise, sleep, or any other healthy habits. You join those in, you add those to them. It's intended to use in concert with those habits. I take them every day, and I love them because they don't get in my beard. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, you get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Klavan. And you're probably saying to yourself, interesting, but how do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. Chapter 1, the Clown Kings of News. I have to tell you that I am embarrassed for the news media. I actually am embarrassed for the news media. The way they covered this tariff story was just, I think they should, if they weren't shameless, they would be ashamed. But I think that they absolutely humiliated themselves and continue to do so. And I have to tell you, in a lot of ways, I'm more concerned about this way this was covered on the right, although I thought Brett Baer at Fox News did a very good job, as he always does. But I was more concerned with the coverage on the right than on the left, because the left, they don't know anything, and they don't care about the economy, and they don't care about America, and they just don't care what happens to this country, because they're going to the utopia of their imaginations. But the panic on the right, the hysteria, like in the Wall Street Journal, and that's my paper, that's the paper I read, But this idea, that China, because they're totalitarian, is allowed to make a 30-year plan to destroy America and take over the world. But our plans have to work by the time the stock market closes, or else congressmen have to work, you're going to start panicking about the midterm. That is disgusting. That attitude is disgusting. It is shameful. It's anti-American, and it's short-sighted, and it's stupid. And that's just, listen, one of the things about my experience of doing this show, which has been really fascinating to me, because I spent most of my life in a room by myself writing, right? And so this has been a really interesting experience. But I've been called a never-Trumper, and I've been called a MAGA idiot. And frequently, by both sides, they say, oh, you're one of these MAGA morons, or you're a never-Trumper. And it's because I don't call balls and strikes. I don't believe in that at all, because I support what Trump is and what he is doing. And so I will always cut him some slack. I actually trust him, and I've come to like him and admire him, which I did in the beginning, but now I like him and admire him very much as a character. I don't know him as a person, but as a character, I like him and admire him. And I trust his instincts, so I give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't call balls and strikes. I'm actually going to be a little bit to his side. But look, he's a large guy with large merits and some large flaws, and when he does something I think is wrong, I say so, and it has cost me a lot of listeners. You said something bad about the great Trump, and I'm leaving. But I have to, I'm not like the other, I'm not like, Knowles and Walsh and people like, I have to tell you the truth because I'm on a mission from God. So when I tell you this, you can believe at least that I believe it, that I'm not just talking to say something nice about Donald Trump. We're in an untenable situation with China that is going to destroy us in about 20 years or not less, right? This was revealed to us in COVID when they poisoned us and then we couldn't get the supplies we needed except by going through them. And Donald Trump has seen this, and I told you this before, I told you this last week and other times, that China is always on his mind, like the old song, "You were always on my mind." China is always on Trump's mind. He knows who they are. He knows who she is. She is a tough guy. He is a guy who is, he's a smart guy, and Trump is a tough guy and a smart guy, but she represents a system that is not a Christian system, that does not believe in the freedom of the individual. It's like, I remember Barbara Walters once interviewing Fidel Castro, and she said, "Why don't you let people speak freely?" And Castro said, "Well, you can do that if you want, but why should I let people who disagree with me speak?" Because he was not a Christian. He was a communist, right? And so is she. Trump is a tough guy and a smart guy who represents our society, which grows up out of a Christian idea and is drenched in that idea that people should be free, that individuals are sacred. And you can tell that's in his DNA. You can tell it's in his bloodstream by the way he treats people. And there are these foolish and greedy capitalists who are holding on to their trade relations with China, don't want that to change, in the belief that China will eat them last. And that is not true. They will eat them the minute they can. And maybe they'll eat them last, but they're still going to eat them and devour them. And that, the stock market went down. I'm not saying there was no pain. It did. It went down because of the tariffs. And I thought Trump was heroic. And I thought all the time, I said to you last week, I can't tell whether this is going to work or not because I can't tell whether when Trump will start negotiating. I always know he's negotiating, but I couldn't tell when he will do it and how long he'll let it go. So he used these tariffs to bring 75 countries, he says, to the negotiating table to negotiate fairer trade deals. That's not protectionism. That's not a trade war. It's just stop taking advantage of us, because, people were saying like, a trade imbalance is fine. It's fine for us to have a negative trade imbalance. And I thought, well, first of all, if it's fine, how come all the other countries aren't fighting to do it? That's the first thing I want to know. But secondly, this is not it's not a trade imbalance. You have a trade imbalance with a store when you're a customer, but you're also a store with customers, right? So I go to the store and I have a trade imbalance with the groceries, but I'm also selling you information and you are customers to my store. And then you have a job where you are collecting money for doing what you do, and that is the system. That's the bigger system. And what Trump is saying is they don't let us be the store any place. They don't let us sell ourselves. We always have to be the consumer. And ultimately, over time, that is not going to help us very much. So that is what he was doing. He's just trying to make it fair. And because of what he did, the good folks came to negotiate, and China isolated itself because they're a bad actor. They don't play by the rules, They steal our stuff and they infiltrate our society. And now it's time for him and Xi to sit down and fight it out. Two big, strong guys who are very smart for their, fighting for their own system. And Xi is going to have to save face. That's very important for him. And I think it's important for Trump too. And they'll both have to understand that about each other, and they will talk it through. So maybe we'll get on a better footing if we win those negotiations. So as far as I'm concerned, right, what happened last week, if I ran a news outlet, my headlines would sound something like this.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. Yay! You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
just saying that was what the news headlines would have sounded like this last week if I had been writing the news headline. But because the news media on the right and left beclowned itself and soiled itself over this tariff strategy and the unsteadiness, is not wrong to report it. It's not even wrong to express the opinion that you think that Trump is wrong. But the panic, they just had these war declared headlines. Everything was going to fall. I mean, I can remember when we had 2 quarters of negative growth in 2022, I think it was, under the Biden administration, and even in the Wall Street Journal, that is the definition. I mean, that's the standard definition of a recession. And they were saying, well, is it a recession? I don't know. Is it a recession? We have 3 days of turmoil, 5 days of turmoil in the stock market. It's like, it's a depression. It's the end of the world. It is because they hate the tariffs and because they don't trust Trump strategy, instead of just reporting the fact that he has done these things before, and he usually comes out of it smelling like a rose. And look, like I said, I love the Wall Street Journal. There are a lot of good reporters there, and even the reporters I disagree with are often good. But still, calm the hell down. So now they have to report Trump has paused it. He got what he wanted. He got the negotiations. He got China isolated. He says, we're going to have a 90-day pause, but I'll go right back to it if they don't negotiate with me. And now they have to report Trump blinked. Trump gave in. Trump flip-flopped. Well, no, he didn't. This was the plan. This was the plan. I told you it was the plan. You have to always know with Trump, it's always the plan. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who, by the way, Scott Bessent has a kind of an odd presentation on camera. And at first I was kind of put off by him, but he's kind of grown on me, and he's clearly grown on Trump too, because they're getting closer. And this is what he said after Trump put on the 90-day pause. This is cut 6.
This was his strategy all along, and that you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors, and we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
So, I think that Trump did underestimate the womanish panic of the investors and in the investor class. And he said he was willing to take us into a recession, which is, bad, but it's also bad for him, right? It's bad for his party. I mean, he doesn't have to run for re-election, but still, it means that he would be a failure as a president if that's where we ended up. But he understands that long term, this has to end. It has to. It's literally a matter of life and death for our country. Do you remember? You probably don't. When Bill Clinton pushed Congress to let China into the World Trade Organization and said it's not going to happen right away, but this is going to make them part of good actors and the members of the Party of Nations and all that stuff, which is just like Barack Obama was going to be nice to Iran and they were going to suddenly turn into Ohio. No, these are grown people with their own philosophy that does not come out where our philosophy comes from, right? Which comes from the Greeks and the Romans and from Jesus Christ. And that's where we get our philosophy that all plays in, whether you're a believer or not. That is what shaped you. That is what shaped our ideas of freedom. And so now, to kowtow to them and pretend that they're utterly malleable and they're just going to change when situations change, and it's not going to happen. They are looking at the world, in a different way, and they want to swallow us and destroy us and lead the world. Who can blame them? That's the way people are. That's the way we are. We want to lead the world. We want to be the big guys, and we are for now, but Trump sees that we are giving it away, and it's got to end. And I just, it's like they think they can sweet talk a bully. And the thing about sweet talking a bully is you are going to end up as his slave. And I know this because I've dealt with a lot of bullies in much different way. And I've seen the people who deal with them by sweet talking them. And no, you just get consumed. China has not been transformed. They are not just persecuting Muslims. They're persecuting Christians. They're starting to hunt them down. Why? Because they know that is antithetical to their system, that if too many people become Christians, the communists will be thrown out on their ear. There's only one God in China, and that is the Communist Party. Just like there's only one God on the Western left, and that is the God Eros, who will enslave you just as fast as the Communist Party. So Trump had a plan, and he said, he was surprised that the number of countries that showed up so fast to negotiate, they showed up like that. And then he felt people were beginning to panic. They were panicans, he said, not only because the stock market was sinking, because the bond market started to go soft, and he thought, this is going to take us from recession, maybe toward a depression. And so he thought, all right, I think I've got what I want. And he said this. This is Trump, cut 5.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Last year, China made $1 trillion off trade with the United States. That's not right. And now I've reversed it. It's for a short period of time, but we made $2 billion. We're making now $2 billion a day. And somebody had to do it.
That does not look like a man who blinked or flip-flopped or anything. It looks like a guy who got what he wanted. He took a chance. He took a big hit, and he won. And meanwhile, he has this cabinet meeting. It's kind of like a business meeting. He's running it because it's out in the open, and people have to stand up and take responsibility for what they're doing. Remember all those people that Elon Musk said, "What have you done this week?" And he said, "You can't. That's abuse if you're Hitler." This is. I think they call it a stand-up in business. People stand up and say what their department is doing, and he has cabinet members show up. And I want to thank Anna R. Matson on X, who posted the videos. And, Pete Hegseth from the Secretary of Defense, he says he signed deals to secure the Panama Canal for United States use. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, says he's negotiating tariffs. The Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, says she's fighting anti-Semitism on campuses, meeting governors and education commissioners as education moves back to the states and holding $400 million from Columbia and $8 billion from Harvard. The National Security Advisor, Mike Walsh, says he's increased ship manufacturing, huge in dealing with China because they're going to have a stronger Navy. Lee Zeldin says he's canceled $22 billion in grants and he's deregulating. Massive deregulation push, which hasn't come to the surface yet. Kimberly Strassel wrote about that in the Wall Street Journal. This is an administration that is doing what it was elected to do. And I'm not saying the press should cheer for it. The press should hold it to account and all that stuff. But the panic has just been absolutely humiliating. So, as you know, I never sleep, but sometimes I sleep, but never, but sometimes. And so I have to get to sleep, which I'm not used to. And that's why I love Beam's Dream Powder. I really do. It tastes great and it knocks you out. It really helps you to get to sleep. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and delivering results. This is a science-backed, healthy, nighttime blend packed with ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. It's amazing. Beam has already improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country wake up and feel their best. And I especially appreciate that Beam is an American company, both built and operated here. Supporting brands like this matters because it goes beyond the product itself. It's about backing hardworking people and companies committed to doing things the right way. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan for up to 40% off. Support an American company, invest in yourself, and start getting your best sleep tonight. And learn how to spell Klavan so you can get this great deal. It's Klavan, no E's. I just make it look this easy. Chapter 2, What the Right Gets Wrong. Now, I pick on the left a lot because they're demonic death cult, but I think that, sometimes we do have to take into account some of the right's flaws, especially in dealing with the culture. When I talk about the culture, I'm not talking about propaganda. I'm talking about the way we regard ourselves, which is and how appealing that's going to be to other people, because it's not appealing to other people. It might be because there's something wrong with it. Among the arguments that were being made against Trump was the argument that basically the system of free trade that we've had for the last many years was tickety-boo. Everything was great. Here's a chart, and it shows that everybody's richer, everybody's got more stuff, everything is terrific. And the middle class isn't dying. It's just people are getting so rich, and this is nonsense. I'm sorry. It is absolute nonsense. Our country is in big trouble, and part of it is the way we relate to ourselves through our economy. Now, I got to be incredibly clear about this. Capitalism is not just a great economic system. It's the great economic system. I don't think there is another system that could work as well as it does. It harnesses our natural ambition to improve ourselves, and it spurs our creativity, and it makes us responsible to the needs of others. And the world was poor until capitalism and free trade became our central way of doing business. And now so much poverty, I mean, this is the incredible thing, so much poverty around the world has been alleviated, so much food has been produced, so much wealth has been created, innovation. There is no other way. Capitalism is such a great system that it can even afford some little bit of socialism to keep weak people from panicking and destroying capitalism. Like the welfare state. Everybody, Bill Maher and all these people used to point to the welfare state and say, you love capitalism. No, you need a little bit of capitalism so that people don't panic, because people panic and they are weak, as we just saw even among the investor class, the rich and the elites. The welfare state is also a temptation to tyrants to expand it into socialism, which is a terrible system. It by necessity, it has a central flaw. It by necessity pools power in the government. They always say, well, everybody's going to have the same thing, but who's going to dole that out? The government. You saw how the government works during the pandemic. The government is not your friend at that level. It's only your friend when you tie it up in chains and don't let it do more than it's allowed to do in the Constitution. Then it's your pal. Then the government is great. Then it's your friend. But if you let it loose and you say, oh, here's the welfare state, then it just suddenly transforms into a werewolf and rips you to pieces. All right. So do you ever wonder why there are still socialists? Why do young people love socialism? Why do they turn to socialism? Why do mentally ill people like Bernie Sanders, who couldn't change his mind no matter how much atrocity he saw in socialism, why do they stick to it, right? When beyond a shadow of a doubt, over and over again, it destroys economies, it becomes oppressive, and it strips us of the motivation to work, and it pools power. So there are two arguments that socialists make, and the right keeps going after the easy one because it's just so easy to tear it apart. And that's the argument that it's unfair. Why does Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, why do they get to have so much money? This is the AOC argument, and I have to save up for a vacation. Why do they get to have everything? They have a yacht, and I just have this old car and all this stuff. And look, the answer to that is very simple. Life is unfair. And you can't fix unfairness without forcing the best people to be like the lesser people, because the lesser people can't be like the best people. I can't play basketball like Shaquille O'Neal, right? So you would have to, if I'm going to play on an equal playing field, if I'm going to get as many baskets as Shaquille O'Neal has to play worse, right? So, and they say this. So I remember, it's not that long ago, I remember some professor came out and said, you shouldn't read to your kids or send them to private school because that gives them an unfair advantage. Or the New York Times, I think, ran articles saying marriage is unfair because it gives you privileges. Or white people shouldn't, there's a white privilege. And my feeling is I am going to use every privilege God gave me because life is unfair. Some people are smarter, some people are more talented, some people are luckier than other people. And you should use every one of those because guess what? We don't all rise together. The door to the future, you have to go through it one by one, and then the first people go through, and that opens the door to all the other people behind. And that's the way it works, because otherwise you just go down and down to the level of the lowest. And that's what wokeness is. So we beat that argument, and we make fun of it, and it's all about envy, and you envy Bezos, and you envy Elon Musk, and go away. Envy ruins everything. Just be quiet. But there's another argument, and that is the unfettered, the attack that the left makes on the unfettered Ayn Rand capitalism. And the argument is that is degrading to the human spirit. And if that's not true, tell me this. Why is it that we're so rich and so advanced and have so much stuff, like everybody keeps saying, and people have stopped having babies? And until a few months ago, so many people were killing themselves with drugs and alcohol, deaths of despair, that our life expectancy was going down. If capitalism becomes the only value that you have, if it becomes your first value, if it becomes your priority value, you will be destroyed inside. That's saying how great it is as an economic system, but it can't be the king of your heart. William Wordsworth, great poet, one of my favorites, wrote a poem. He said, the world is too much, and he was talking about capitalism. He was talking about the new world that was coming into being as he was living. He said, the world is too much with us late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away. So when people panic about climate change, which is ridiculous, we say, oh, they're worshiping Gaia. No, they're not. They're expressing something that happens if everything is industry, if everything is the human touch. You know, that Ayn Rand idea that the New York skyline is the most beautiful thing in the world. That's a sick, empty thing to say. That's a stupid thing to say. You know, I'm an outdoorsman. I've been in the woods. I've spent a lot of my time and my life in the woods. And a friend of mine the other day sent me an article of a scientific study. I think it was from Oregon, saying that there's a reason that people feel better walking through the woods than strolling down a city street, according to a physicist, Richard Taylor, and a team of collaborators who did this study. And they asked the question, what happens in your brain when you walk down the street? And they concluded that urban environments are not pleasing to the human brain. And the reason, they think, is the lack of fractals in modern architecture and spaces. Fractals are patterns that self-repeat at different scales. And I wrote in The Truth and Beauty about how fractals represent God. They represent the Godhead, the Creator, because they come down, they're three-part things that come down through the Trinity, and they actually are incredibly beautiful and convincing of the fact that we are not here by accident. And the thing is, this is about this. I'm sure this didn't happen to people in the streets of Athens. I'm sure it doesn't happen even today in the streets of Florence, but it happens in New York City, which is the city that has forgotten nature and has been built on these modern principles. Without an underlying humanizing and I would say Christian worldview, a view that looks askance at the love of money and that says that charity matters and compassion matters and family and spiritual development and culture matter, capitalism turns you into a greedy workaholic who doesn't care about the poor and who lives to consume without souls shaped by Christianity. And, you know, you can say other religions as well, but in our society, in our culture, it's mostly Christianity. Capitalism regards people as things to use. What is the use of this person has? You know, if you ever watched Mad Men, wonderful, wonderful show about the advertising business in the 60s, and Don Draper was the expert ad man. And every week, basically, what he would do is he would pitch an ad campaign that transformed stuff into spiritual value, that pretended that stuff would give you spiritual value. Here's one of his pitches from Mad Men. This is Don Draper, cut 10.
Mine was my father taking me to the drugstore after I'd mowed the lawn and telling me I could have anything I wanted, anything at all. And there was a lot. But I picked a Hershey bar. The wrapper looked like what was inside. And as I ripped it open, my father tousled my hair, and forever his love and the chocolate were tied together. That's the story we're going to tell. Hershey's is the currency of affection.
So everything we're supposed to believe. And the reason that works is because it subverts a truth, which is that everything physical is actually a reflection of the spiritual world, but they're saying that chocolate is love, and that's not true, right? So that's the difference. They're not saying it's connecting you. What they're doing is they're wheedling money out of you by an imitation of communion. Communion, which says bread and wine becomes body and blood of God. They're saying chocolate is love, give us your money. And that is essentially what capitalism can do. And that's why capitalism denigrates motherhood. You know, socialism hates motherhood. They started out, Marx and Engels said, we got to get women out of the home because they are in the way of our economic system, a system that is purely, in some ways, economic, although it thought it was spiritual. But capitalism catches on pretty quick that if you can get women into the workforce, wages will stagnate, and you will have twice as many workers to abuse. And they learn to do this. And, you know, all those idiot feminists who think they're left wing, who say, oh, if you had to pay a wife and mother, it would cost you, you know, 6 figures. That's because they're capitalists. That's a stupid thing to say. My wife, you know, if 6 figures, are you kidding me? You know, that's not, my wife is priceless. What she did for our kids, what she does making a home for me, that has no price. That's, you know, asking what the price of that is like asking what the color of 5 is. It's just putting on this capitalist idea on something that is outside of that idea, which is why capitalism has no place for wives and mothers. And I'll tell you some other stuff that's priceless. Your community is priceless. And so when a company moves out and goes to Mexico and leaves your community in the lurch and then comes back and says, oh, we're citizens of America, corporations are people too. Well, then you have the responsibility of people to the people around you. Your pride in your work matters. It doesn't matter if you get a guaranteed income, if you have nothing that makes you useful. And if you do all these things, people, we used to have this argument at DailyWire all the time where I say, you have to think about these things. And everybody would say, no, you move whenever you want to. And I thought, yeah, but I'm a drifter in the world. I'm a wanderer in the world. And most people aren't. And conservatives have to believe in community because that's where conservatism comes to life. And if you start talking to me about Ayn Rand, who writes a story, The Fountainhead, where the hero blows up a building because someone changed his blueprints, and wears a dollar sign instead of a cross, and she hated Ronald Reagan because he opposed killing babies in the womb, and she's also a crap writer. The stuff she said is illuminating when you're 13. You could read a book by Bastiat called The Laws, 70 pages, and you wouldn't have to put up with all her crappily written speeches. But if that's the choice, if that is the choice, that we're supposed to worship, Elon Musk because he builds stuff, and listen, I admire him because he builds stuff, good for him, but there's a lot of stuff I don't admire, and those things are more important with like family and your culture and all that stuff. But if you were a young person with any kind of idealism at all, wouldn't you become a socialist, And again, Wall Street Journal, love the paper. So many good writers there. I really do. But so panicky over this because they think America is just about trade. America is about trade, but it's more than that. The Wall Street Journal, they think we can let all the migrants in. We need, cheap labor. But no. Everybody screams about Christian nationalism, and I don't want to force anybody to believe in anything, but God and country have to come first, and then business. And then business works out great. And I love business, and I love capitalism, but it doesn't work unless God and country come first, because we're a people under God. And if the right doesn't understand that, they are selling something that's hollow, even though it works in the physical world, even though it works right in the physical world, they're selling something that's hollow. And if money comes first, the love of money, the love of gold is the root of all evil. And if that's what we're selling, we will lose the argument. Have you checked your home title lately? Neither have I. Most homeowners never do, myself included, but with the growing amount of digital scams targeting property owners, it's important. It's more important than ever. With modern technology, criminals have found an alarming way to steal your home equity. They simply add a fake notary stamp, pay a small county fee, and just like that, your home title gets transferred without your knowledge. Once they control your title, they can take out loans against your equity or even sell your property entirely. And the worst part is you might not discover anything's wrong until you receive an unexpected collection notice or foreclosure letter. Don't wait until it's too late. Take a moment right now to verify your home title status and protect what's likely your biggest investment. Use promo code Klavan at HomeTitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report, plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HomeTitleLock.com now. Use promo code Klavan. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code Klavan. How do you spell it?
There are no easy things.
Chapter 3, Democrats Go Wild. So, all right, enough hectoring the right. I just had to say that because I was just so embarrassed by the way the press, and especially the right-wing press, was covering this story that I just had to say something about that. But the left, meanwhile, is totally out of its mind. They just opposed a House measure to make it illegal for non-citizens to vote, obviously because they cheat, and that's why they opposed it. But they said, what if a woman is from another country, but she gets married, and then she changes her name? Women are not smart enough to be able to re-register under, unbelievable, the stuff they said. And they are a product. And this is what I don't want us to become. I don't want us, the right, conservatives, traditionalists, Americans, to become crazy because we live inside our own heads, that we live in our ideology, instead of remembering that we are a community of people, and those people should be free, and those people matter in their spiritual development as much as in their need for prosperity, which is also a real thing. We are both flesh and spirit, and those things have to go together. But we have to remember both of those things, even in times of, when the stock market is not doing as well as we'd like it to be doing. The internet makes it so much worse that people live in their heads. I got to pause here for a personal story. I hope you won't find me petty or bitter, but I keep saying I try to tell you the truth, even if it hurts my ratings or something, because of course I'm on a mission from God, and I've caused a lot of controversy with this. But I remember one of the biggest controversies I ever caused was when I said I preferred John Wayne as a male role model over Mr. Rogers, who always struck me as a little bit gay. And people literally threatened to punch me. You think it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood? Pow! So I thought, well, maybe his teachings didn't actually do what he said they would do, whereas like I'm a peaceful person because I love John Wayne and knew that I could get through a fight. All right, but the most controversy I ever caused, 2019, which is now, gosh, it's so long ago, but I watched The Witcher on Netflix, and a story about a woman, a really good story, and I really enjoyed it, about a woman who trades power for her ability to give, she trades her ability to give birth for power. She wants magical power, but the deal is she can't give birth. And she suffers for that. And the story ends with a mom telling her how joyful her life as a mother is, basically telling her you made the wrong choice. But in the middle of this, she gets in sword fights with soldiers and she defeats them. And I said, look, the idea that she can have power, but she sacrifices something for it. She sacrifices maybe the core of her womanhood for that kind of worldly power. That's an honest message. But to have a woman win a sword fight with someone of equal strength and power is nonsense, right? And the people, years, I was getting people, and here's like you can still go on YouTube and find these people. Some of them perfectly civil, but just they think I'm an idiot. Here's just an example of one person's reaction to that. Cut 3.
Who is this person? Andrew Klavan. He's on The Wire, I think, or something like that. One of these. Kind of, the same show Ben Shapiro does. But he came out and said, there is zero way, in any way, shape, or form, doesn't matter the kind of fight, that a woman can beat a man in a sword fight. A woman will lose 100% of the time. I sat there, heard that, tilted my head, and it was like, what in the name of hell are you talking about?
So I was getting letters, so help me, emails and such from women fencers who said, I'll come over your house and all this stuff. I said, no, wait a minute. You can't fight like a 60-year-old scribe. You have to fight a person of your strength and who's also trained in sword fighting. And it can't be fencing because fencing has rules, right? This is war. And if you ever see the film, The Last Duel, which has very good pictures of medieval warfare, you will see a woman, she wouldn't be killed, she would be atomized. The guy would just walk through her to get to the man behind her as he killed her. Okay, so I'm the worst person on earth for years. This goes on for years. So now there's a fencing tournament in Maryland, and a fencer, very excellent athlete named Stephanie Turner, was competing. And this was a regional tournament at the University of Maryland, and she was paired up with a man who was pretending to be a girl, okay? And she's looking at the list, and she saw it, and she decided, no, this was her reaction when she saw that she was paired up with a man. Cut 4.
From that point, I just got really disappointed with the USFA and with this tournament, and I just felt like at a loss. I'd already committed so much money to it and training hours, and I was literally looking forward to this. I do this tournament every year. Yeah. I think this may be like my 10th year in a row doing this tournament. And I just got really sad, and I started crying because this was like the last thing I wanted to deal with in my competition.
So, she must have been listening to that Andrew Klavan because, she knew she was going to be decimated. And she goes out, she took a knee, they blackcarded her, they threw her out of the tournament because they said, oh my gosh, how can you say that a man's not a woman? That's ridiculous. What a horrible, horrible thing to say, that a man's not a woman. Because obviously Obviously, she can't defeat a man, even in a fencing tournament with rules. The guy came over, and by the way, she was incredibly polite. She said, "I love you, I respect you, I honor you, and all this stuff. But I can't fight you. I can't fight you." And now all of these people are like, "Oh, what a hero! What a hero that she stood up to this man, this guy! What a hero that she stood up." She actually she won an award. They was given like $5,000 award for protecting women's sports. And I thought, like, do I get an award? I was standing up for that. Lies make you insane. And when you live inside your own head and then come out into the real world and find that they are lies, that you've been living in this fantasy world, you go insane. And the fact that we are on the internet all the time and living in and it's worse for elites, because elites aren't as exposed to to reality as much. They aren't as exposed to the necessities that yank you out of your head and make you say, like, "Oh, wow, wait, no, of course I can't fight this guy. He's 3 times my size." And, that's reality. Oh, okay. But we live so much in the internet, in our heads. And if you're an elite, you really never have to come out. That's why it was such a good strategy to send these migrants to, Martha's Vineyard. And it was like, oh, no, we didn't mean to come live with us. We meant come live with those people that we never see. So after a while, you turn into James Carville. James Carville, just, he and George Stephanopoulos, their job was to suppress the voices of women who'd been abused, harassed, and credibly accused Bill Clinton of. That was their job. It was like they called them bimbo eruptions, because these women were saying, this guy abused us. He chased us around naked. He raped us. He did all this stuff. And their job was to intimidate the press into not taking these people seriously. And Carville famously said of Paula Jones, who later basically won in court because she proved that she'd been harassed, he said, "If you drag $100 through a trailer park, there's no telling what you'll find." In other words, she was just a cheap bimbo who followed the money, who came out for money. So he's been appearing on news programs forever. They never canceled him, just like George Stephanopoulos. He's a big newsman and that was his credential. His credential was silencing women who said they'd been and harassed. That was his credential for becoming a big anchor man and running the show. And James Carville is a respected guy. They have him on. They have a yuck up with him and all this time. This is what he's saying now on his podcast about people who work with Donald Trump. Cut 1.
Do you know these collaborators with the country is going to feel toward collaborators with this regime? Maybe you need to go in history and see what happened in August of 1944. After Paris was liberated, they didn't take very kindly to the collaborators. No. It was not a very pretty sight in the streets of Paris. I'm not saying that these people should be placed in pajamas and have their heads shaved, march down Pennsylvania Avenue, and spit out. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that did happen.
He's not saying that it did happen. That's what happens. You become violent because other people don't exist in your head, right? They exist in their lives, and you have to kind of come out of yourself and recognize that. Let me just show you one more clip of this. Florida congressman who's running for governor of Florida because DeSantis has stepped down, Byron Donalds, and he confronts a gay right protester. Listen to this conversation listen to the voice of a Republican versus the voice of a Democrat as they argue the case. Cut 2.
I was just in D.C. on Monday for Trans Day Visibility, and I would like you, as a member of Congress, to rise up and support LGBTQ plus youth and stop this insane attack on our children who know who they are.
Number one,
no. Of course you're not, because you're a fascist. You're a trace. You're a race traitor, and you're a fascist.
In the middle of I asked you a question. I said I don't agree, and then you start yelling at me. You call me a fascist. You call me a race traitor, and you want me to agree with you? What are you talking about, ma'am? I'm a constitutionalist. Ma'am, I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in freedom and liberty for everybody.
So that's why, because he's getting in her head where life is a fantasy and men become girls and children know what they are, and that she's in there in that world, and he's breaking in there and saying, no, here's reality, and everybody, I'm a constitutional, everyone should be free, and all she can do is scream. She can't even let him finish a sentence because that is what she's protecting. She's defending that universe of the mind, and this is how you get these results from Rutgers University's Social Perception Lab that 31% and 38% of respondents stated that it would at least be somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk and President Trump, respectively. And these were largely driven by respondents as self-identified as left of center, with 48% and 55% at least somewhat justifying murder of Musk and President Trump, indicating that significantly higher justification for violence against these figures. Roger Kimball points out, by the way, that there is also a Pew poll that says atheists identify as Democrats by 84 to 13%, agnostics by 78 to 21%. So Albert Camus, the philosopher, was right, because he said that atheists see the injustices of life as so unforgivable that even if God exists, he doesn't deserve to exist because the world is so unjust, and it's right to reject God. And instead of a perfect God and a sinful humanity, what they end up seeing is they believe in a sinful or absent God and a blameless humanity capable of perfection, and innocent mankind must create the perfect justice that God should have created but did not, and so they are justified in committing murder. And so I want to end by talking about murder. So here's a problem. Current handgun storage options are like choosing between two flavors of terrible. Either your weapon is locked up tighter than Fort Knox, completely useless in an actual emergency, or it's sitting around like an accident waiting to happen. Enter StopBox USA, who apparently realized that forcing people to choose between safe but inaccessible and accessible but dangerous was a ridiculous false dilemma. Their solution, the StopBox Pro. I've been using my StopBox Pro for a while now, and one reason I love it is because it uses a push-button locking system that doesn't require you to fumble with keys while an intruder casually waits for you to find the right one. And unlike those fancy electronic locks that inevitably die when you need them most, this thing is 100% mechanical, no batteries, no problems. So while the rest of the world is busy making smart devices that fail spectacularly when unplugged, StopBox USA went old school reliable. Quick access when seconds matter, secure when they don't, and zero dependence on electricity. This really matters to me, by the way, that my gun is safe but also available, because I have grandchildren and I don't want them finding it or being able to use it. And I appreciate that StopBox manufactures all their products right here in the USA at their dedicated facility. This homegrown approach guarantees exceptional craftsmanship in every unit while creating valuable employment opportunities for American workers. For a limited time only, our listeners are getting a crazy deal. Not only do you get 10% off your entire order when you use Andrew Klavan at StopBoxUSA.com, but they are also giving you buy one, get one free for their StopBox Pro. That's 10% off and a free StopBox Pro when you use code Andrew Klavan at StopBoxUSA.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with StopBox. Final chapter, Murder and the Imagination. Murder and the Imagination was my original title for Kingdom of Cain. I really do hope you will go out and pre-order it. The publisher watches those numbers very carefully, and they mean a lot. So I think you're just going to like the book so much, and the arts reveal so much. You know, the arts really do reveal the souls of the culture. I was talking about Adolescence, that show that was the Netflix show that was about a boy who killed somebody. And people said it was an attack on whites. And I said, no, it was not an attack on whites. That was not the intention of the story. But it was written by a person and created by people who could not imagine making a black person the protagonist, because their imaginations have been restricted by ideology. And I pointed out this happened the same thing when my book, True Crime, was turned into a movie. They had to change the white man into a black man because they couldn't bear the idea or imagine the idea of a persecuted white man being persecuted to protect black people. And so now we have this murder, and it's as if this controversy over the Netflix show had come to life, this murder of a boy named Austin Metcalf, 17-year-old kid who was killed by a black kid named Carmelo Anthony at a track meet. Metcalf thought Anthony was sitting in the wrong seat in the bleachers, and he said, "You have to move." And Carmelo Anthony said, "Touch me and see what happens," and then stabbed him. And Metcalf died in the arms of his twin brother. Just a horrible, horrible, tragedy and atrocity. And now, of course, things have gotten ugly with people turning out to support Anthony. They raised over $300,000 for his defense, they have spread lies about the Metcalf boy, that, saying that he was on drugs and he died of drugs. And this is stuff that is completely untrue, according to the police, and that he was a bully or anything. But just to be fair, many black influencers are standing up and saying, hey, this is appalling. This guy's a murderer. You should be going out. But of course, what adds to the tension is the fact that the media took George Floyd's death, which was not statistically representative. Even if you believe, which I do not, that the police murdered George Floyd, that is not statistically representative. That is not what happens to police. And they had all these riots that were basically, inspired by the Democrats. The Democrats basically looked the other way, and the editors at the New York Times were like, "Oh, this is not violence. They're just burning down buildings." And they were very violent and very fatal. And buildings, of course, were people's dreams and their shops and all this stuff. And that was not representative of anything, even in the worst scenario, which I believe was a complete fabrication. And so it's infuriating that. It's infuriating that now the press just really isn't covering this at all. If you're not following Fox or the Daily Wire or something like that, you don't even know this happened. And what's infuriating about it is that it is statistically representative of the fact that an inordinate amount of murders are committed by people who are black. 40 to 50% of people, and that's 14% of the population. And since almost all murderers are male, that's really 7% of the population. And lying about that makes it worse, not better. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the fact that there is this violence in the black community, which isn't, I don't think, like violence in the Islamic community, philosophically inspired, so you know where to look. We don't really know where this comes from, and the left can say, oh, it's all the fault of white bigots, but I don't think that that's true anymore. I think that there are serious problems. I think the fatherless problem is a huge problem. But the question is, how do we deal with these, unpleasant facts that don't fit with these things that are in our heads? We've been told that if we even notice this, we are racist, because that means you're coming out of your head. And the thing about living inside your head, by the way, is people can control you. The narrative people can control you. The TV people, the Hollywood people, the academic people, the news media people, they can control you if you live inside your head, because if you're not listening to the voice of reality, there's nothing to counter that fantasy that you're supposed to live in. Well, Metcalf's father, Jeff Metcalf, said this on the Laura Ingraham show, and it struck me because of the way he put it and the way he explained it. He was not just being pious. He's a Christian man, but he was not just being pious. He was saying something that was just psychologically and spiritually true. This is cut 7.
I'm deeply rooted in my faith, and without the Lord, I would not be blessed with my sons. I would not have the ability to be able to forgive. The thing about forgiveness is this: I don't forgive for the other person. I forgive for my own peace. I can't carry that around me. It would be like cancer. It would eat me up inside. So the Lord teaches us to forgive. Now, am I angry? Yes, I'm human. But I have to live with myself, so I have to forgive. And I'd like to tell what the world needs is more kind people. And if you can't find one, be one.
Now, that's kind of brilliant. And the fact that he can say that in the situation that he's in, which is the worst situation any human being can be in, to lose a child. And the fact that he can say that is remarkable. But we all have things that we've had to forgive. And I certainly have had things from my childhood that I had to forgive. And it really is true that it liberates you and it sets you free. And it's hard. The funny thing about hating people is it really is easy. It's that thing like, oh, this must be right because it just feels so right. You're just rolling downhill, so it's great. But it's hard. It is suffering. It causes suffering to forgive. It causes you to suffer to forgive. And you have to get through that suffering. And when you do, you find, oh, I did something really remarkable because I'm not twisted by anger and hatred. People are always asking me why I don't debate the Groypers, that debate being bro mentality. Why? And I'll tell you why. My son once asked me a really good question. My son, Spencer Klavan, no relation. He said, what would it mean to you if somebody did a peer-reviewed scientific study saying men and women are exactly the same desires, same personalities, same way of thinking about things? So it wouldn't mean anything to me because it wouldn't be true. And he said, right, so who cares what their studies say about that? And the same thing is true. Why, what would a debate between me and a Groyper be like? They're going to tell me to hate the Jews, and I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to hate anybody. And then what if they win the debate? It doesn't matter because what I'm saying is still the truth. So the media, which is in the business of creating what's inside your head, stokes our anger, stokes our division, stokes our rage, stokes our panic, and most of all, stokes our fear because fear sells papers. But real problems, like the problem of violence in the Black community, can be faced with honesty and depth if you face them with love. If you come to these things saying, well, first of all, who do I want to be as I face this problem? Who do I want to be as I face this reality outside of myself that I did not create, that I'm not to blame for, that I can't change maybe, but how do I face this reality? And that is the thing that you're looking for when you look into the face of evil. That's what my book is about. That's what the Kingdom of Cain is about. What you are looking for when you look into the face of evil is the face of love. You're looking for the path to love in evil because this is the world, folks. This is the world. The world is not the happy place you see in Christian movies. The world is this place. The world is not the place in your head that you're going to fix by getting out and screaming fascist at people who disagree with you. That is not the world. This is the world. This is the world. And terrible things are going to happen and beautiful things are going to happen. Don't be afraid, as the theologian said. It's creation that is the opposite of evil. And so the question is, what are you going to create? What are you going to make? Are you going to make a home? Are you going to make a family? Are you going to make something that is beautiful in the world, in the face of the world as it is? And the people who are living inside their heads and think that, they are in charge of making things perfect, they're the people who wind up screaming at people and wind up like a desiccated James Carville saying we have to parade our political opponents through the streets and beat them up and, cut their hair and all that stuff. You don't want to be James Carville. One day, sooner than you think, you're going to be like an old person like James Carville, or even hundreds of years older like me, and you do not want to look like James Carville. You want to face this world with love and creation, which is the opposite of evil. This is what real media looks like. The DailyWire delivers hard-hitting news led by facts and feelings too, but the right feelings. We cut through the noise with unapologetic truth. When you become a DailyWire Plus member, you unlock it all. Ad-free podcasts, the best in investigative journalism, and premium entertainment that is reshaping culture. America needs bold voices now more than ever. Join the fight at dailywire.com/subscribe. Klavan Klapbacks.
Say how do to the raging Cajun, Mr. James Carville.
Oh, Jesus. Somebody open the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah!
Good question. Klavan Klapbacks, Klavan with a K, Klapbacks with a K at dailywire.com. Please write in. We love to hear from you, and we love to hear what you're thinking about and how you react to the show. But also, you can ask personal questions. You can ask political questions, religious, artistic. We will answer them if we can. Great question today, I think, from Lewis here. He says, Dear Andrew, thank you always for your weekly wisdom. Well, I find every podcaster on Daily Wire to be insightful. As a fellow creative person and a former liberal, I find your commentary resonates with me. Particularly, you are truly one of a kind. Well, thank you very much. That's not the part I was trying to get to, but thank you. I find that my creativity is only a fraction of what it used to be. In my liberal days, I attribute that to having lost some of the arrogance and narcissism I used to have, the kind that led me to believe I could shape my own reality and morality. I do think artists need to be open in order to create. I find that my conversion to conservatism, so to speak, has left me more mentally rigid and more reactionary. Most of my ideas come from anger and turn out as mere anti-liberal propaganda. The only way I have found to avoid this slump is to avoid any kind of news or politics-related content and focus on the arts. You've said before that most artists are dysfunctional by nature and that you are a rare exception. Do I really have to choose between my creativity and my sanity? How do you manage to keep both? Any insight would be appreciated, Lewis. Really good question, because I don't think it just applies to creative people. I think it applies to all people, and you can, if you pay attention. I've always said politics is bad for you, and politics will make you stupid if that is what you focus on. And I will say that living the creative life is mentally dangerous. Somebody once said, writing is easy. All you have to do is sit down and open a vein. And he was a sports writer, so he wasn't even dealing with some of the harder kind of writing. So So you do have to take care of yourself. You have to do spiritual exercises, go to church, think things through, go get therapy if you need it, whatever. You have to take care of yourself as a writer so you last longer. The guys who use alcohol, which is what a lot of guys use, or drugs, they're fine until they're about 40 or 50, and then they're done. Where if you want to keep going and so that you can bring even deeper wisdom into your work, then you got to stay clean and really keep your mind together, because your art is not coming from your dysfunction. It's coming from your creator. So here is the thing. You pegged it exactly, Lewis, is that this is coming from your argument with the news media. When I was writing my nonfiction books, The Kingdom of Cain, and the one before that, The Truth and Beauty, I would frequently find myself writing for an entire writing session, which is very precious to me, my writing sessions. And I would write, all these pages that were arguing with the left. And then I would take those pages and put them in what I call a dump file. And the reason I keep a dump file is so that I can I can lie to myself and say, well, it's always there if I need it, because I never need it. I put something in a dump file, I never see it again. And with The Truth and Beauty, I put 100 pages in the dump file, 100 pages of me arguing with the left, because I thought, I don't want to argue with them. They're not saying it. I want to create something. I want to create a vision of what I see, not a vision of what they're doing. So if that works for you, write your argument and then throw it away and cut it out. Cutting out is a wonderful thing you can do when you're a writer. But if it doesn't work for you, tone down. Stop listening to the news so much. Stop paying attention to what they're saying, because we live in an empire of lies. And that is the fact. That is going to be true today, and it's going to be true tomorrow. The only difference is it just gets bigger and bigger because the media gets bigger and bigger. And if it's, hurting your creativity, then you have to get rid of it. You just have to get rid of it. So watch less, think more, do more spiritual practices, and just keep your brain clean of that stuff. And look, every now and again, it still slips in. I still cut it out. I just cut it out. I just get rid of it because it's not what I'm trying to do. Think of it this way. You are the creator. They're not the creator. If you're arguing with them, if you're fighting with them, you are letting them take over your creativity. And, that's true, by the way, whether you're an artist or whether you're just living life. If what you're doing is fighting with them all the time, then they win. Then they basically are controlling you. That's why the people who get angry, who hate the Democrats, who hate the left, who hate the Jews, who hate blacks, who hate whatever, they are being controlled by those people. If you let yourself be controlled by the guy who made you, you will be a different person, and you will continue to be much more creative and happier as well. By the way, I forgot to ask this last time. I really enjoyed doing that member block with the Tolstoy story. And I didn't ask you for feedback. I got a lot of feedback in the Klapbacks, people who really liked it. But if you did like it, if you drop me a quick note, I would really appreciate it, and I'll do it again. I'll do it again with something else. But I won't if people didn't like it. If they thought it was boring or they just turned it off, then I won't do it. So let me know what you thought. I'm interested. And become a member today, not tomorrow. Do it now. Right this minute. Don't let it waste. Lifetime is flipping by. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Klavan at checkout. You have to look up how to spell it, but it's 2 months free on all annual plans if you use code KLAVAN. And like I said, look up how to spell it. If you are already a member, then you will not be plunged. Like, look at the guy next to you. He's gone already, right? It's like the end of the world. He's just disappeared into the Klavanless darkness, but you may come to Member Block.